Ah, damn. Injuries. Okay, Joel Embiid, you hurt. But 0 for 12? 0 for 12 in the second half? I mean, damn. You couldn't find a way to get free throw line or something? I mean, come on. Now we got ourselves a series. Philly was supposed to take control. Now they in trouble. And they making noise down in the ATL. All right. We'll see. First takes in the house. Let's go.
We welcome you from Atlanta.
Sixers with blowout wins in the last two games.
We're okay. We just got to focus on the next game and getting that one.
Open is Young.
Starting to get it cooking here.
Once we got to playing the way we play, we got settled down.
Howard with an alley-oop jam. A burst by Philadelphia.
You got to work harder to keep that ball in front of you.
Oh, my goodness. John Collins. The Hawks even this series at 2 apiece.
Good day. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to First Take on a Tuesday. The crew is on your screen. That is Stephen A. Smith, Max Kellerman. I'm Molly Karen Rose. Gentlemen, top of the morning to you. Let's get after it. We got plenty of playoffs to get into here, and we got a 1-hour show, so we're going to rip through this. Despite being down by 18 at one point, the Hawks rise up and even the series with Philly. After a slow start, Trae Young finished the win with a game-high 25 points to go along with 18 assists, 4 rebounds. On the other side, the Sixers saw all 5 of their starters score in double figures, but in the end, not enough to get the JOB done. The series will shift back to Philadelphia on Wednesday night for what now is essentially a best-of-3 series. The big fella had 21 boards last night, clearly bothered by his knee, but he's not stressing it.
It happens. Bad game happens. I've been playing well, and sometimes you just can't control it. Sometimes I thought in the second half a bunch of shots went in and out. There was a couple calls that could have gone, either way. I can do better. I can always be better. But as far as, you being 100%, I don't think that's going to happen, until the year is actually over. So that's it. I just got to go out and, manage it and just deal with it.
For perspective, Embiid's 12 misses in last night's second half are the most without him making any half over the last 25 seasons. The Hawks' 13-point halftime deficit marked the team's largest in a playoff comeback win since 1963. Hawks could do it. I don't know about those Falcons, though. Stephen A., would you characterize this as an Atlanta comeback or a Philly collapse?
Well, it's definitely a Philly collapse. That's how I view it. I mean, when I see Trae Young shooting 30% from the field, Bogdanovich shooting 36%, 37% from the field, and they're your 2 leading scorers for the Atlanta Hawks. To me, it's not about what they did. It's about what the Philadelphia 76ers did to themselves. Joel Embiid is not healthy. We got all of that. But if you're healthy enough to be on the court in the second half, you and I are healthy enough to make 1 shot out of 12? You go 0 for 12? You averaging at least 15 free throws a game. You go to the free throw line 4 times. You 7 feet. You 7'1", 270, 280. You can't find a way to get to the free throw line. You can't find a way to make one bucket. But it's not really about him because, again, I understand that he is hurt. I totally get that. Here's my issue. Tobias Harris, my brother. Tobias Harris scores 20 points. Shoots 8 of 15 from the field, a very respectable 53%. You cannot shoot 15 times when you know good and damn well Joel Embiid is not healthy. You're Tobias Harris. You got skills. You can ball. You got to take the ball. I'm not talking about hero ball the way that Doc Rivers decried, but you got to take the ball by the horn. Seth Curry made a decent amount of his shots. Tobias Harris made a decent amount of his shots, better than a decent amount of shots. You got to take the ball and say, my man is hurt. My big man ain't ready right now. He ain't right now. Give me the damn ball, and I'll do what I need to do. We can't have that. Tobias Harris has to be more aggressive. And I said this, Max, last week. Tobias Harris has to be taking 20 to 25 shots a game, especially if Embiid is not healthy. But if he Philadelphia 76ers, that didn't happen last night.
But if he doesn't, that's not a collapse by the Sixers. Look, injury is deciding these whole playoffs, right? We were so nervous about the bubble. There should be an asterisk. Stop it, everybody. The bubble was fine. The best team won. This year, the fears were justified. short offseason, compressed schedule. What's going to happen? Look at every playoff series. The best player on every team is hurt, right? That's what happened. That's what happened to Embiid. He's playing on a torn meniscus. I'm not going to blame Embiid for having a bad night when he just gave you 39, 40, and 27, and 2 of those were wins, and one of them should have been one? No, it's not on Embiid. It's not on a Sixers collapse. This is about the Atlanta Hawks and the comeback. It's about Trae Young showing himself again. This is one of these amazing star turns, and it's not just like Donovan Mitchell and Jamal Murray were amazing in last year's first round. This is Trae. Embiid's healthy, the Sixers win. He's the best player in this series. But he's not, and you have to figure out a way to get it done when it's not your night, and that's what Trae Young did. The Hawks came back. That was the story of this game.
Well, I think your point would be far more profound if there wasn't an 18-point deficit that they had to climb out of. If you're the Philadelphia 76ers, why do you lose an 18-point lead with a guy that's shooting 30% from the field? And the only people that shot decently, your 2 primary scorers were you, Trae Young, and Bogdanovich. And Bogdanovich shot 37% and you shot 30%. It happened because the Philadelphia 76ers offensively collapsed. Because even though Embiid was a bit hampered because of his injury, and I'm not blaming him per se, I'm saying that you go 0 for 12 on one leg. Embiid could go 3 for 12 on one leg. He could do it because that's how gifted he is. So 0 for 12 in the second half is a bit alarming. But more than that is the fact that a guy like Tobias Harris shooting decently from the field, what's up with the passiveness? Why is Embiid taking those shots instead of you when you look at your teammate and you know he's not near 100%? Why did that happen? And that's the point of it all. You can't let that happen when you're playing a game of basketball and you looking at your teammate and he's hobbled. You got to know that's your moment to step up and say, yo, coach, fellas, I got this. Come to me. Especially since he wasn't struggling and he was making shots. And Seth Curry was making shots.
Joel Embiid has had a heroic series so far, playing on that torn meniscus, and 3 out of the 4 games.
But yesterday he was clearly aggravated, Max.
Yesterday. It got worse. Something happened. Hopefully the tear didn't get worse. Something got worse. You could say, well, teammates need to step up more than they did. Okay, fine. The opening was there because of Embiid, and we all knew, if you like the Sixers, it's because he's the best player in the series. You didn't mention John Collins. He got hotter later in the game. That's an almost 20-point-a-game scorer. Normally,
about 3 or 4 of them were dunks. Not like he was lighting it up from outside.
But he is about a 40% shooter. A feel-good story for the Hawks today.
Well, of course, it's a feel-good story for the Hawks. It shouldn't be a feel-good story for Max Kellerman. I understand if Trae Young or Nate McMillan or John Collins or somebody was sitting there and saying, yeah, we feel good. This is about us. Sure, they should say it. But Max Kellerman, it's nothing about it that should be a feel-good moment for you.
Why? I saw a great young player.
The point that I'm trying to make is that you had an 18-point lead. You dominated the previous 2 games. And then dominated the first half. So in other words, whatever mojo that you had working for you in games 2 and 3 that enabled you to take control of the series, you had in the first half of game 4, and then Embiid gets hobbled, and suddenly you forget how to play basketball.
But it's also on the defense. It's also on the defensive end. When Embiid is healthy defensively, he can totally change a game, change people's minds, change the complexion of the other offense. When he's not so healthy, right, Collins gets a
The
bunch
Atlanta
of dunks.
Hawks shot 36% from the field and 30% from three-point range. If you ask Doc Rivers and the Philadelphia 76ers what they were looking for defensively, that's exactly what they were looking for. They just didn't plan on being so putrid offensively once Joel Embiid was clearly
give
hobbled.
Atlanta credit. You're still salty about the Knicks series. Just
I'm
give
not
Atlanta
actually.
credit.
I'm not
Give
actually.
them
Atlanta was the better team. They beat the Knicks. I'm over that.
Was
I'm
it the
beyond
17
that.
years
I think
in
about
Philly?
I think about the New York Knicks the next year. I'm focused on being objective about the rest of these
Focused
playoffs.
on being-
Atlanta was the better team against New York. They're
As
not the
much?
better team against the Philadelphia 76ers. The 76ers blew that game last
Well,
night.
if Embiid's not healthy, they may be the better team. That's the whole thing. But it's interesting. Your Knicks, the Hawks play your Knicks. Then you spent 17 years in Philly. Now they're playing your Sixers, and you still don't want to give them credit for coming back. Okay.
You really think that I'm going to fit? You have any idea how many times I've crucified the 76ers?
Yeah, okay.
He just expects more from Philly. That's what it is.
We're not talking about crucifying the Sixers. We're talking about, by the way, that's a continuation, right? They collapsed. Embiid got hurt. Atlanta took advantage.
All right, we'll leave it there, fellas. All eyes are now on Kevin.
Says he's got to get it done. The Brooklyn Nets, in my opinion, are not winning this series without Kyrie and James Harden. It's not going to happen. After they went up 0-2, they were up 49 points. We saw an annihilation in place, and the Bucks showed up for Game 3, which we both predicted would happen. But still, we didn't see any way that the Brooklyn Nets were going to lose this series so long as they were healthy enough to play. That's not the case. Kyrie Irving and James Harden are both out. And I don't expect the Brooklyn Nets to win this series without Kyrie and James Harden. But who knows if they would be available for Game 7, which takes us to Game 5. Because Milwaukee's winning Game 6. They're not losing Game 6 in Milwaukee. They will win that game. So to me, it comes down to tonight. And where I became one of my most famous quotes, Max and Molly, was in 2001. When I was a beat writer for the Philadelphia Inquirer covering Allen Iverson and the Philadelphia the 76ers. My boy Kevin Frazier for Entertainment Tonight always brings this up because they were interviewing me and I said the Lakers in 5, it's nothing to discuss. And everybody was like, well, why ain't you calling a sweep? And I said, oh, AI will get you one. AI will get you one. 6 feet, 160 pounds, soaking wet. The answer, Allen Iverson rolled into the Staples Center and dropped 48 and stepped over Ty Lue to clinch the deal. It was just one game. I knew they wouldn't win another, but he got you one. Because in the game of basketball, when you are that dude, when you are that superstar caliber player, you can get a game. Not the series, but a game. That's what we're asking Kevin Durant to do tonight. Please understand something. I don't know if anybody knows this. Max, I don't know if anybody has said this before. Kevin Durant is the greatest player in the history of New York. There's been not Clyde Frazier in 1971, not Patrick Ewing, not Carmelo Anthony, no one. Kevin Durant is the greatest basketball player to ever represent the city of New York in basketball.
That's true.
Period. There's no doubt about it. Okay? You can 7 feet, arguably one of the top 3 scorers in the history of basketball. You can't just show up for one game, although you're 44 games removed from that Achilles injury. You can't show up for one night and get one game. I believe he can. I believe he will. I believe a night like tonight, KD drops 50. And it saves Brooklyn for a few days, hoping that Kyrie and or James Harden can come back for Game 7 because they're going to lose Game 6. They don't even need to travel to Milwaukee.
You don't get to get you can't get away with that. Time out. Wait a minute. KD doesn't have Kyrie or James Harden, right? You know who else doesn't have Kyrie or James Harden? Giannis. He never has Kyrie or James Harden. When he plays KD, the second best player in the series will always be on KD's team. Middleton and Holiday show up as stars sometimes, which is why they're not perennial all-stars. They're sometimes all-stars. Harden and Kyrie, those guys show up all the time. That's why they're perennial all-stars, and in Harden's case, and a perennial MVP candidate. Now, all of a sudden, Giannis has the second and third best player, outside of Giannis and KD in the series. Now it's KD, Giannis, and then the next two best players are both on Giannis's team. And now all of a sudden, KD gets off the hook. Why? Well, you weren't letting Giannis off the hook. I was. I'm not expecting KD to win the series now. He doesn't have a say. He still has Joe Harris, shoot the lights out. Still has Blake Griffin.
I'll answer your question.
Blake Griffin, good. He hits you with a double-double, basically averaging for the series. And if he needs to step up, he's capable of more. We saw him posterize Giannis. Physically, he looks good again. No. If you're not letting Giannis off the hook, then KD doesn't get off the hook either in this case. And if you think KD can win one game, well, look, when you say a star can get you one, I remember LeBron James had one game of Kyrie Irving against the Warriors in 2015. They lost that game in overtime. Then he didn't have Kyrie the rest of the series. Also didn't have Kevin Love all series. Got two. You're saying one game to start a series? You're saying KD can get one game now? There are 3 games left. If you can get one, now it's going to come down to a one game, win or go home. You should be able to get that one too. I'm giving KD a pass because he doesn't have his guys, but you should hold him to the same standard you hold Giannis.
Well, first of all, that's a very ignorant statement for a couple of reasons. Number one, KD, give me KD with Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday, and I still would have picked them. What I'm saying to you is this. When I get on Giannis, I get on Giannis for 2 things. Number one, his perimeter shooting or lack thereof. And number 2, the fact that you called him the best player in the world. Those are the things that I get on Giannis about. In terms of, I never picked Giannis to win this series. I said Brooklyn all day, every day. I said Brooklyn at the beginning of the season. I said Brooklyn coming into this series. And I said Giannis against KD, it's no real match because he can't hit perimeter shots. He needs somebody else to do that for him, particularly in tight playoff competition, because he can't make those perimeter shots. And I think that's been proven true. Even though Giannis is big time, that's his Achilles heel. The case with Kevin Durant, Joe Harris can't hit shots away from the Barclays Center. Blake Griffin suddenly looked like he was in Detroit again. Okay, Jeff Green just returned after being out throughout the playoffs because of his injury. And again, whether it's Kyrie or James Harden, I've been on the record stating just one of them with him, KD will win. But to ask him to win this series without them, I think is a bit much. But again, you take one game at a time. And in my opinion, he should be able to deliver the goods tonight. One game to force a Game 7 back at the Barclays Center. He should be able to win one game.
3 things. 1, I said Giannis was the best player in the world because he was the reigning regular season MVP. And as a prediction, I thought he would do well in that playoffs. He did not.
You highlighted how others won the league MVP, but they weren't the best.
I get it, but
just because he was the MVP didn't make him the best.
That was, well, given his age, his size, the kind of player he was, that was predictive on my part.
You were the only person on the planet that didn't know that he didn't have a jump shot.
Sometimes you make predictions that are wrong. And when the series was over, I was like, okay, my prediction on Giannis was wrong. That's number 1. Number 2,
when the series was over.
KD,
it was when the weekend was over.
If KD had Middleton and Drew Holiday, and Giannis had Harden and Kyrie, Giannis's team would win. Absolutely, Giannis's team would win. If he had Harden and Kyrie. That's 2. 3, you are saying...
True. I don't think that's absolutely true.
You are saying KD is the best player in the world. You said he's number 1, right? Let me just remind you again.
Yeah, go ahead.
LeBron in 2015, no Kyrie for one game. No Kevin Love. So no games, one game with Kyrie, no Kevin Love. And they lost the game with Kyrie with Matthew Dellavedova as his main support. Took the Steph, Clay, Dre Warriors, Iggy Warriors 6 games. 6 games, won 2 from those guys.
Max.
Let's see, Kevin Love has more around him than LeBron had that year.
How many times have I told you to be quiet about that particular series? That the Golden State Warriors had never won before. They were babies. So when Kyrie got hurt the first year, and Kevin Love had gotten hurt in the series against Boston that forced him to miss the remainder of the playoffs. LeBron was the one with championship experience. He was the best player in the world at that time as well, and he was going up against a relatively young squad. So winning 2 games against them wasn't as significant as when he won later on.
Stop right there. How much championship experience does this Bucks team have? Because KD has won multiple championships now.
But we're not,
He's a 2-time Finals MVP.
We're talking injuries, Max.
But so LeBron dealt with that too.
You brought up injuries at the beginning of the show. What I'm saying to you is because Kyrie is gone and because James Harden is gone, you look at the rest of his team, I'm not going to sit up there and say with those trees, those big boys, and the bodies that they're throwing at him, you see the physicality that they've allowed PJ to play with, okay? So if you don't have any kind of help whatsoever, that's a tough team to beat. But I'm taking it game to game, and I'm saying to you that KD, being a prolific offensive player, can sit up there, and it's not a different standard.
You have a different standard for LeBron and KD. 2 different standards. LeBron was playing the baby Warriors with Steph, Dre, Clay, and Iggy. KD is playing
how many years
the
ago
baby
was that?
Bucks.
How many years ago was that?
Championship experience. The point is,
this
they
is
don't
why I
have any
get annoyed
championship
talking basketball with you,
either.
because you bring up irrelevant, nonsensical points
You
that have
brought up my
absolutely
Giannis
nothing
take
to
from 5 years
do.
ago.
How many years ago was that? How was the game played?
All right,
Who
enough
were you
with
going
the babies.
against?
We got to go. The guys
Styles.
Luka Doncic. We had maybe the best dunk of the playoffs last night and an injury scare to go with it to his right leg in the fourth. Kawhi lettered posterizing Derek Favors. Kawhi and Paul George both had 31. Marcus Morris adding double digits as well. Despite Donovan Mitchell finishing with 37, it wasn't enough. They clearly missed Mike Conley, who was out with a hamstring. The Jazz shot only 14 of 40 in the first half. Here's playoff P on Kawhi after the game.
You know what time it is. It's written all over them in terms of it's go time, it's playoff basketball, and ultimately it's winning time. And so you see it all around him. His approach, his body language, everything is to be great. And so he's leading the way.
This would be your first trip to the Western Conference Finals in franchise history for the Clippers. What would it mean to you and the organization to advance?
I don't care about the Western Conference Finals. I'm trying to win a championship. Obviously that's the next step, but right. I'm not even looking at that. So I don't even know we took criticism. I don't know what's going on in the outside world.
Max, who do you trust more now, Clippers or the Jazz?
The Clippers. And the reason is Kawhi is still playing and Paul George is still playing, right? And Mike Conley isn't. This entire playoff season has been determined by injury. You look at the Hawks-Sixers. You know who's going to win? If the Sixers are healthy, they'll win. Otherwise, the Hawks will win. Nets-Bucks. We all know the Nets are going to win. Unless they don't have their guys. Then the Bucks will win. Same thing with Clippers-Jazz. Right now, Kawhi's playing. Let's see how he responds because he didn't look great at the end of that game physically. And Mike Conley isn't. And since Paul George has shown up recently, the Clippers will win. Unless Mike Conley comes back and Kawhi's not playing or is a really diminished version of himself. Then the Jazz will win. Stephen A., if you're wondering, hey, let's say everyone's available. Who's going to win this series? The answer is the Clippers because Paul George has finally arrived in the playoffs, and he's done it for a couple games now. He keeps this up, the Clippers will win. But I do think the determining factor will be, does Conley get back on the court? And if so, can Kawhi stay on it?
Are you listening to yourself? Well, I trust the Clippers, and the Clippers will win. Unless Mike Conley shows up, and then they would lose. Kawhi could be Kawhi, and Paul George could be Paul George. But if Mike Conley shows up, but then it's the Clippers. But then again, it could be the Jazz because Mike Conley might show up. I'm going with the Jazz.
If Kawhi's hurt, don't misrepresent it. If Kawhi's
Excuse me?
Don't misrepresent it. I'm saying if Kawhi's hurt and he didn't look great at the end of the game, the Jazz will win. That's why it's injury. If everyone's healthy, Clippers will win because Paul George has arrived.
Okay, thank you very much for that. If everyone's healthy, the Utah Jazz will win this series because I think they'll win both games in Utah. I think they win Wednesday. They lose Friday at the Staples Center, and then you got a Game 7 back in Utah, which I think that they will win because I think that Donovan Mitchell is the biggest star on the stage. I think he'd be a bigger star than Kawhi Leonard, or just as big of a star as Kawhi Leonard, and the supporting cast of the Utah Jazz will come through. I love what I'm seeing from the Clippers. Having said that, Marcus Morris had a big-time performance last night. That can't go unnoticed. 24 points. You don't usually get that from him, but you got that from him last night, including 7 or 8 free throws, so I give him major props. Paul George and Kawhi both dropping 31. That's a beautiful thing. But the Utah Jazz are not healthy right now. Donovan Mitchell was not himself. I was at the game. He didn't look like himself at all. You should have saw him off camera, man, while the game was going on, Max. They're stretching him. He's laying back behind the bench near the tunnel, and they're stretching him and trying to put him through stuff during the game because he clearly was not healthy at all. You need him. You need Mike Conley. But if we're going to make the assumption everybody's healthy, then I've got to see it to believe that the Clippers would beat the Utah Jazz in Utah for a Game 7. If it was the Staples Center, I'd roll with the Clippers. But a Game 7 in Utah, I have a hard time believing that the Clippers team that we've watched over the last couple of years would win that game. I hope I'm wrong, because unapologetically, I would rather be in LA than Salt Lake City for the NBA Finals.
Had a good night's sleep in Salt Lake City, Steve.
But it's a beautiful city, and I heard they got nice burgers, but damn it, no. If I got a choice between LA and Salt Lake City, I'm going to pick LA all day, every day.
Nice burgers?
Yeah, somebody,
You're hilarious.
No, they sent some dude, Molly, keeps setting my Get At Me segment on Stephen A's World on ESPN Plus. He keeps sending in these videos bragging about the burgers that they got in Utah and how I need to come and get one of those.
Cute.
Yeah, that's what he keeps saying. I ain't eating the damn burger, okay? But the point is, in the end, Utah is a pretty damn tough place to play. Their home crowd is sensational. I think it would, not Kawhi, but I think it would be a lot to ask anybody else, or do we trust that they'll come through when it counts in a Game 7? That's what makes Game 5 so pivotal.
First of all, a burger is the perfect food, and I would love to if they're bragging on the burgers,
This particular
I'd love
burger,
that.
Max, it looked nasty. That guy that sent it like bacon. It had some other stuff on it. I didn't like how it looked. I didn't like how it looked. It looked like a heart attack waiting to happen.
Well,
that's my personal
that's a separate
opinion.
story. That makes
It
look
looked like
better.
a heart attack waiting to happen.
Sounds
It didn't look
amazing.
healthy.
I don't think that you can set. The reason I focused on health, Stephen A., is because did you listen to yourself when you went through it? You're like, I don't like the way Donovan Mitchell looks. Mike Conley's not playing. We just don't know who's going to be ready to play in terms of health.
But we
Even
all
Kawhi
don't know.
At the end of that game.
That's why you saw my reaction like that, because we all don't know. Obviously, injuries play a role. That's obvious.
Well, okay.
Obvious. So again, assuming health, this is where I stand.
Whoa.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Oh, I get it. But what I'm saying is, because of the compressed schedule and the shortened offseason, every fear about injury has come to pass.
By the way,
Stephen
question
A.,
for you.
I don't ever remember injury having an impact on the playoffs on every series like it
Quick
does
question
right
for
now.
you. Quick question for you, because I'm trying to figure out why you let players off the hook on this. Correct me if I'm wrong, Molly and Max. There was a 4.5-month hiatus because of COVID-19 before bubble play resumed, before play resumed in the bubble. Then most of the league was home by September, with the exception of 4 teams. So essentially, you come back for a month and a half, all right, after a 4.5-month break, and then you got 3 additional months off before the next season started, with the exception of about 4 teams, okay? So what the hell is all of this stuff about?
Well, because they are getting hurt.
It was a short. Well, because they didn't take care of themselves.
None of like Stephen A., think of how many. It would be one thing if it was a guy here or a guy there, but it's every walk of life, every size. LeBron, AD, Embiid, Harden, Kyrie. Just pick a team. Donovan Mitchell, you just said, is in bad shape. We saw Kawhi not looking great at the end of that game. Pick a series like Atlanta, the Sixers. Jamal Murray went out.
Nobody's denying the injuries. I'm just saying that you can't let people off the hook acting like they were playing all year long through the summer in October, and then they had to come back in December. That is not the case.
No, that's right.
So for these guys, 4.5 months off.
For a lot of them, but let's put it this way, point blank. The right team won the finals last year. Everyone complains about the bubble. It worked out fine. The Lakers won. They were the best team. This year, I was where you are. Like, oh, stop, everybody. It's, 72 games. You can do it. But look at the results. Dude, every single series is being decided by injury.
And some dudes, not all, but some dudes didn't take care of themselves, and that's something that we need to highlight, because with the money that you're getting paid, it ain't like you got to go and work at Lowe's or Home Depot or something in the off season. You got enough money to prioritize taking care of yourself, to making sure you're ready to roll once the season rolls around.
They used to do that in sports, major sports. The athletes,
they used to do
that.
That's why I brought that up.
Get jobs in the off season,
that's not the case now.
Shelves and stuff.
Now with the money they're getting paid, you can take care of yourself.
Every
All right. Game 5 Wednesday. Let's go, gentlemen. When we come back, will Mike D'Antoni land another head coaching job and be paired with Damian Lillard this go around? Stephen A is going to go off on this news when we return. Stephen A also loves talking about the Cowboys, but there's another Dallas franchise that has him very concerned. Is there a situation brewing with Luka in Dallas? That is next.
What's up? What do you want to know?
I want to know how you feel about it.
Mike D'Antoni deserves to be interviewed. I don't think he deserves the job. Mike D'Antoni is very innovative offensively, but we see what he brings to the table. He's had 16 years of head coaching experience on the NBA level. He's never even gotten to an NBA Finals. It does come a point in time where it's somebody else's time. And I view him as a guy that continues to get chance after chance after chance. And I'm not saying that he doesn't deserve to be a head coach somewhere else, maybe with a team that done nothing. And, maybe someplace like Charlotte with young talent where, you got cats that can push the ball up the floor, high risers, they're relatively entertaining, and he can do that. But when you talk about Portland with an experienced backcourt like Dame and CJ, I think this is just something that's going to push Damian Lillard out the door. This is something that's going to make him really, really want to leave Portland because I don't think it should happen. Why are we not talking about Sam Cassell? Why are we not talking about Chauncey Billups? Why are we not talking about guys like that? Even a guy like David Vanderpool, who was an assistant in Portland and an assistant in Minnesota, who is very, very close to Damian Lillard. How about guys like that? Give him an opportunity, because certainly D'Antoni has had his opportunities. Why can't somebody else get there?
D'Antoni's never had a roster that was the best roster in the league. He's never won a championship. But you know what D'Antoni could do?
He ain't going to have one in Portland either.
Why? Unless Damian Lillard. If Damian Lillard objected, I would say, okay, Dame, it's your team. But unless Damian Lillard objected, the reason Portland hasn't won a championship has nothing to do with coaching. Their roster isn't good enough, period. Like, you may want to, because the money works on this trade. You want to trade McCollum for like Brandon Ingram? Even then, is Ingram and Lillard and whatever else? That's not a championship roster. The roster is not good enough. You know what you do with a roster that's not good enough, but with a dynamic point guard? If that point guard will buy into D'Antoni's system or to D'Antoni, go get Mike D'Antoni, because he will get that team closer than they deserve to get to the promised land. They will be better coached by Mike D'Antoni than they would otherwise be. And you know what'll be? You know what'll happen? They're so much better than they should be that when they fail to win a championship because their players aren't good enough, Stephen A., you and others will point to D'Antoni. See, D'Antoni can't get it done. What? He doesn't have the horses. He gets farther with less than others. D'Antoni for Lillard, if Lillard wants him, is perfect. It's perfect.
He wins games, but not championships. And I think that there are an abundance of people in the league who can do that. The man has had 16 years as a head coach at 4 different locations in his career. You don't think that somebody else could win a few games and get to the postseason with a roster like Portland has? I think they could.
Took the Warriors 7 games
All right.
7 games, and they played at home. LeBron couldn't do that.
Another story I want to get to, guys. So yesterday, The Athletic publishing this story detailing turmoil between Luka Doncic and members of the Mavericks front office, saying that although Doncic plans to sign the Supermax with the team, some in the organization are worried this rift may make him leave. Mavs owner Mark Cuban blasted this on Twitter, calling it absolute BS. Max, is this something or nothing?
It's nothing. It's nothing. You know what this sounds like to me? Some scouty type person in the organization doesn't like the fact that Bob Voulgaris, who's a former professional gambler and a real analytics guy, he thinks that Voulgaris has too much power in the organization. That's it. That's what it sounds like to me. And this is what I mean by nothing, Stephen A. Do we believe that Luka Doncic is going to sign his Supermax extension? I do. If you believe that, nothing to see here. Let's move on. The Porzingis trade apparently was not Voulgaris' call, even according to the article in question, right? Porzingis is always hurt. And the rest of the roster, I thought they had a good team. They were destroyed this year by COVID and health and safety protocols. Porzingis' injury and COVID and health and safety protocols. That's what's going on with that team. And I think Luka's going to stay and they're going to be just fine.
I think you're wrong, and I think there is something to it. And Luka, just because he's going to sign his $200 million max extension, doesn't mean that he's going to be happy about what he's experiencing and what he's witnessing. I'm not trying to cast any shade on Mark Cuban or Rick Carlisle, individuals I got a lot of love for and have known for decades. What I'm saying to you, however, is this. When you have won a championship a decade ago and you haven't been out the first round since, you got 6 playoff appearances where you've gone out in the first round. The other 4, you didn't even make the playoffs. And you got a stud like Luka Doncic who's looking around and wondering what the hell you're going to do about it. That's going to create some animosity. It's going to create some friction. It might not be all the specifics that were ironed out. And Mark Cuban, unless you have proof, Mark Cuban ain't going to admit to much any damn way. What it comes down to is this. All is not peachy keen in Dallas with the Mavericks. If better talent will resolve it, more winning will resolve it. But when you don't have that right now, of course, it's going to be a tense situation. Let's not act
to
like
be
that's
continued.
Not the case.
Yes, definitely to be continued.
Hello, what is going on, everybody? Welcome into First Take on a Monday. I'm Charlie Arnold. We got Freddie Coleman in Bristol joining us, and my girl Monica McNutt right here in studio. Doesn't it feel so good?
I could almost reach out.
Almost. One day we'll be able to hold hands here. Freddie, we wish you were here with us. But guys, we have a lot to get to because we are coming off some big conference final, semifinal games from last night in the NBA. Unfortunately for the Nets, they are experiencing more of the same from the entire season, really, and that being injuries. The big 3 down to 1 in last night's Game 4 against the Bucks after Kyrie left the game with a sprained right ankle midway through the second. He went up for a layup, came down hard on Giannis's foot. Now there is the distinct possibility of both Harden and Kyrie being out for Game 5. So the load will fall to KD if this is the case, who last night held to 9 for 25 from the field. Here's Steve Nash after the game.
Yeah, Kai, x-rays were negative, but we'll have to see how it goes tomorrow and further tests and treatment. Obviously we lost a great player during the game, which was tough. We all got to pitch in. We all got to play together. We got to move the ball. And I thought tonight we got a little single-minded, looking for Kevin every time. Puts a little bit too much pressure on him. It makes us a little more predictable, I thought, which puts a lot of burden on him.
All right, final score last night, 107-96. Freddie, we'll start with you here. Can Durant win a game without the other 2 members of the Big 3?
I don't believe so, because you look at that starting 5 that he has. This is the worst starting 5 in a playoff game that Kevin Durant has ever been a part of. I mean, think about this. This may be the worst starting 5 that Kevin Durant's ever been a part of since his first year in Seattle. When you take out a Kyrie Irving and a James Harden, we don't know, even if Kyrie Irving plays in Game 5, what kind of compromise situation is he going to be in, because a lot of his games is based on movement. He's got to have that movement, that great handle, that great dribble. And now you have to have Joe Harris and Blake Griffin play out of their minds. I'm not buying that from that standpoint. Unless Kevin Durant scores 81 like a Kobe Bryant did not too long ago, that's the only way that I believe that he'll be able to do that and win a game without those 2 guys. You're expecting guys who know their roles to go above their roles. and as great as Kevin Durant is, now he's got to be a playmaker, facilitator, leader. Well, we've wondered about their Kevin Durant, at least I have, from the standpoint of that you don't have to worry about being a leader on a basketball team, because that's why he went to the Brooklyn Nets and why he was suited for that role to be with this team and letting somebody else do that. Well, now that has to fall on him, and he has to do with the guys that I've mentioned when it comes to guys that have to play above their roles. So as great as he is, unless he scores like 81 points, I don't believe he can win one game without Kyrie Irving and also James Harden. Who knows, we're going to see those two guys for the rest of this series against the Milwaukee Bucks.
You don't think KD can get a single game, Freddie? While
No.
81, I know, is a bit of hyperbole, right?
Sure.
In theory, KD does have the skill set that would allow him to do that. Here's what I think is different from compared to some of those teams that maybe didn't have as stout a supporting cast as we've seen KD be a part of in Golden State or even Oklahoma City, if you want to go that far back. KD has grown tremendously, right? I think he is a better basketball player than he was when he got into the league. I think he understands the magnitude of the moment. And quite honestly, if Jason Tatum can get you 50 to allow a Boston Celtics squad get a victory versus the Brooklyn Nets with two of their three superstars on the court, I believe that KD does have the superstar caliber DNA that he could help elevate this team to that moment. And furthermore, beyond that, I don't know that I trust the Bucks that much that it is out of the realm of possibility. A single game, Kevin Durant can do that for you. He is that caliber talent. Now, the series, that's a different story because I do think that the Bucks can continue to make adjustments and make it very difficult for him. But my good friend Justin Tinsley at The Undefeated has this mathematical equation for playoff series: 2-1-1, and 2 being your superstar has to carry you and get those 2 wins, and then your supporting cast get that 1-1. If Kawhi Leonard can do it for the Clippers, I think Kevin Durant can get it done for the Brooklyn Nets. Not that it's an easy task, but one game, I think KD can give me that.
I'm going to use these numbers. Milwaukee has 2 to Kevin Durant's 1. And those 2 dudes right now, Chris Middleton and Giannis Antetokounmpo, are going to be better than that one with Kevin Durant. That means you're telling me, Monica, that Kevin Durant is going to match their production, which means 68 points. He's not going to be able to do that. And right now, Chris Middleton and also Giannis Antetokounmpo have a better supporting cast right now than Kevin Durant. I'm not trusting that Joe Harris, who's been one for the series so far from the three-point line, is also going to find that touch, especially when everybody's going to load up on Kevin Durant and you're going to have the ability to make shots. And Joe Harris has shown so far in this series that he can't shake loose from that defense. And even when he was been wide open like he was in Game 3, he was not able to knock down shots. Those 2 guys right now, Giannis Antetokounmpo and Chris Middleton, are not going to face the defensive pressure from the Brooklyn Nets the way that Kevin Durant is going to face from the Milwaukee Bucks defense. Because I know if I'm Milwaukee, if I'm Mike Budenholzer, I'm loading up my defense saying, Kevin, you're not going to do anything. We're going to double and triple team you, which means that Blake Griffin will have to go back into the hot tub time machine and be Blake Griffin when he won the slam dunk competition. And then Joe Harris going to have to win the three-point shooting contest running away. That's a lot to ask from those 2 guys to replace Kyrie Irving and even James Harden, even come near their production, to give yourself a chance if Kevin Durant's going to go above the number that he's going to have to go above to find a way to make sure this is not a 3-2 series and going back to Game 6 down 3-2 against Milwaukee.
Freddie, where we agree is that it would be certainly a tall task. And I happen to believe that the Slim Reaper is up to get it done, easy money sniper. But I will say this, how quickly we forget that we are only 2 games removed from the Milwaukee Bucks looking, let's just go with crazy in the first 2 rounds, right? Like, I don't know that I buy that they have completely turned over a leaf and that Middleton and Giannis Antetokounmpo can continue to make up for, 76% of their offensive production. So while I think that we agree in that it being a tall task, I'm not necessarily sold that the Bucks are so fortified that we can't see them have a hiccup that resembles those terrible performances of Game 2. Now listen, a series is a long, 7 games potentially? So I'm just not that convinced that the Bucks are that stout and locked in the rest of the way. I think Kevin Durant can carry it. Shooters got to shoot to make shots, and shooters have to shoot to get hot. And so for me, Joe Harris, Landry Shamet, Jeff Green obviously back on the floor in the most recent game for the first time in a long time. All those guys have to continue to keep playing. And what we did see from the supporting cast for this Brooklyn Nets squad, in the absence of all 3 of their stars, is that they are willing to play hard. I think some of the nuggets in terms of the wins that this Nets team came without those big 3. Obviously, we know they didn't play a ton of games. So those guys are capable of playing hard and getting after it for you. I am not sold that Giannis and Chris Middleton are so far gone that KD can't catch them. If some of those guys show up just a little bit. He can get
Monica,
you one, Freddie.
a little bit. They don't have to show up a little bit. You're right. They're going to play hard. They better produce hard. It's not about playing hard. You're supposed to be playing hard at this point. But producing hard, that's asking a lot from the people you just mentioned. Whether it's Mike Jones, whether it's Landry Shamet, whether it's all those guys. Now you're asking them to go above and beyond what they've been able to do in what could be an elimination game for the Brooklyn Nets. Because if they don't win Game 5, they're not winning Game 6 in Milwaukee. This series is going to be over, and the Milwaukee Bucks are going to be on their way to the Eastern Conference Finals. I'm a faithful man, Monica, and I know you're a faithful woman, but that's way too much faith. I don't want the congregation say the church doors are open. Please help the Brooklyn Nets.
goodness.
That's
Listen,
asking a lot of faith of those guys.
It is asking a lot. I'm not saying that it's not asking a lot, but every athlete everywhere will say, just give me an opportunity. I'm just not going to rule it out because I'm not sold that the Bucks have turned up this corner and will never look like they're susceptible to catching the L again. That's all I'm saying. You got KD. Give me guys that are going to play hard. The playoffs are a funny thing. We've seen teams jump up and avoid complete sweeps and make it gentleman sweeps and so on and so forth. Give me KD. I've got a chance. That's where I am with it, Freddie.
Okay, so let's break it down. According to Freddie, KD needs to score 81 points. Griffin needs to jump in the hot tub time machine. Also, we'll need to see less from Giannis because this was his 14th playoff game with 20 points in the paint. There we go. But what do you say now we switch it over to the Western Conference where it was a clean sweep for the Phoenix Suns? A task made easier after we saw the league MVP get tossed, getting slapped with a flagrant 2 after taking a wild swipe at Suns guard Cameron Payne. Players around the league stunned following the Joker's ejection. Trae Young chiming in saying, a flagrant 2? Wow. And Ja Morant, he just had 2 words, but they spoke very loudly. He said, league soft. Okay, Freddie, what do you say? Is the league soft?
The NBA is not soft. The NBA is what the NBA is. And the reason people will use that word soft is because they're so used to what happened when they grew up watching basketball in the 80s, the 90s, and the 2000s. The NBA has made sure they're going to legislate, and they have legislated, slug it out, clutch and grab basketball. So anything that goes beyond that pale, because the referees have been instructed to make sure the game does not get out of hand. Now, let's be honest, ladies. Players don't want to fight. There's way too much money. If a dude wants to fight, that means he's more of a G League player than the NBA player. He's not going to be around long. But in this situation, other than the referees, I thought they allowed the rules of engagement in the NBA to override the decision making. When did sense be taken out of the equation? They have Nikola Jokic, making a play in the basketball, and yes, it was a play that was beyond the pale. But a flagrant 2, to me, at worst, it should have been a technical foul. You shoot 2 free throws, boom, let's play basketball. But the league is not too soft because the NBA has made it a point to say, we're going to allow players to be basketball players. You shouldn't have to go to a weight room and be a better basketball player or be a better defender. But I honestly thought that the rules of the NBA, because people say it's soft because what they saw last night, they say, well, back in the day, back when we were just roaming the earth as old people playing basketball and we didn't want these kind of things to happen. All of a sudden now, this is not part of the NBA and people thinking we liked it better. Did you really like it better when games were 70-69, 80-79, and shooting percentages no more than 40%? Give me this. I thought the referees are overzealous with the call, but I will say this. The NBA is not soft. The NBA is what it is. And I don't mind the NBA being this kind of NBA in this day and age.
It is particularly interesting, Freddie and Charlie, that Trae Young and Ja Morant, who I love, shout out to Memphis, who showed love after I picked the Memphis Grizzlies to beat the Golden State Warriors.
You were the only one.
You know, I'm here. Like, I'm here.
We here. We here.
It's interesting that these 2 guys chimed in on this, right? They are 2 slight point guards, right? They're not big guys. Ja goes to the rim with reckless abandon and could care less who was waiting for him on the other side. And of course, Trae is one that draws the commentary, that's not a foul or that's not basketball, very often because of his ability to hunt for fouls and opportunities to get to the free throw line. So it's interesting hearing this from them. I do agree with you, Freddie, in that I take a little bit of issue with the word soft. The game obviously now has been catered to the offensive players, and we love high-scoring affairs. In this moment, it felt to me that Nikola Jokic was being treated as a player who has a reputation of dirty plays. Now, technically, because my folks on Twitter was all at me last night, the definition of a flagrant 2, as I may read really quickly, unnecessary and excessive contact committed by a player against an opponent, right?
Right.
It was a basketball play.
Right.
Yes, he was frustrated. There was a little bit of a wind-up. but it was a basketball play. Nikola Jokic is trying to slap the ball away from campaign. I also think that we have to be mindful of looking at things in slow motion, right? Because if my face turned right now, Freddie, and I gave you a mean side eye, like in slow motion,
you don't want that.
Listen, it's going to look way more intense than in real time. And so I think while technology is designed for us to get the best look possible, I agree with you that we've taken a little bit of judgment out of the game. And I'm the daughter of a referee, right? I do think that it is unfortunate that in this moment you're talking about your MVP, an elimination game. It was It was 85-73. It was an 8-point ball game at that point. I got the score wrong, but it was an 8-point ball game. It is unfortunate to me that the stripes have become a part of the conversation about what should have been maybe the Nuggets' opportunity to avoid getting swept. So I don't know that I would agree with the league is soft, but I do think that call lacked a little bit of tact and reading the room in terms of the moment.
Yeah, use your head if you're an NBA referee, because we know this, and we can say this out loud. If Cam Payne had done that to Nikola Jokic, he's not being thrown out of this game. This is a case of a bigger man against a smaller player, and they saw that. It reminded me so much of Shaquille O'Neal when somebody said, well, Shaquille O'Neal can take getting fouled. I'm thinking, well, a foul's a foul. I don't care if you're 8'2" or 2'8". A foul is still a foul. Just because he's a big man doesn't mean he should have to endure more punishment from smaller people beating up on him. I thought this was a reverse situation. If Nikola Jokic was the same size as Cam Payne, let's say he was Devin Booker, there's no way that Devin Booker is thrown out of this game. And to be fully honest, even if Nikola Jokic stays in the game, they're still getting swept because Phoenix was that good in the fourth quarter. At one point, Chris Paul made 9 straight shots. They ran the same play. They ran what I call the DOI offense, ladies, definition of insanity. They ran the same thing over and over again, and Denver said, well, it worked the first 7 times. It won't work number 8. Well, it worked the first 8 times. It won't work number 9. So they wouldn't have won this series or not avoided being swept, even Nikola Jokic on the floor. But I thought he was the punishment because he was a bigger guy. Cameron Payne is not a bigger guy. And I thought they took that rule too literally, to the point it should have just been a flagrant 1, technical foul, 2 free throws, and let's play basketball.
Yeah. Well, if you were on Twitter, you saw what Stephen A. had to say about this call by the refs. He was not about it. Now, the Joker is only the second MVP to be ejected from a postseason game. Steph Curry was the first back in the 2016 NBA Finals. You remember he took his mouthpiece out, threw it into the stands. It hit a fan. So this is only the second player in 25 seasons, by the way, to have that happen. All right, now we move on because the Joker's absence led to some smooth sailing for the Suns, who swept the Nuggets out of the playoffs 123-98. Chris Paul, he did the damn thing. The 36-year-old went off for 37 points. He's now just 4 wins away from his first ever NBA Finals appearance.
Chris was saying before the game, he ain't never swept somebody. He ain't never beat anybody 4-0. And I don't know when the last time the Suns have been to the Western Conference Finals, but, tonight is one of them nights that, we celebrate in-house, and then, we wake up tomorrow and, we're on to either the Clippers or Utah.
A couple years ago, they was writing me off. You can't do this, and this ain't about me, it's about us. Show you what you can do when you come together as a team. We got a great team over there, and it's a lot of fun to be a part of it.
Chris Paul, you gotta love him. You saw the hug he gave to Monty Williams after the game. That was something. Freddie, I have to ask you though, would Chris Paul be a top 5 point guard of all time should he win a chip?
No, because he's a top 5 point guard already now, whether he wins a championship or not.
Okay.
I don't think a ring is going to make him less of a top 5 point guard or more of a top 5 point guard. And I get it. People always attach championship rings to people's legacy. How many did you win? How many did you not win? Well, John Stockton is in my top 5 point guards of all time. He didn't win a championship ring. Isaiah Thomas is one of the greatest point guards ever. I split hairs between him and Chris Paul. I got between 4 and 5. I got Magic 1, Oscar 2, Stockton 3. Then I got a tie between Chris Paul and also Isaiah Thomas. I'll split the difference. I think Isaiah Thomas is number 4 and Chris Paul is number 5. But whether they win a championship or not, you can't discount what he's been able to do no matter where he's been, whether he was drafted by New Orleans or with the Clippers, and they blamed him for their fall. The Houston Rockets, they tried to blame him for that fall when it wasn't his fault. At the same time, the fact that he's been able to do this when people were trying and determined to write him off 3, 4, 5 years ago, he was a top 5 point guard, period, to me. So no matter what he does, no matter if they get to the Western Conference Finals, get to the NBA Finals, no matter what happens, he's still going to be a top 5 point guard to me. A championship ring or not a championship ring is not going to take that away in my mind when it comes to Chris Paul being a top 5 guy and a top 5 point guard all time.
Freddie, we agree because we basketball people. But you know it's naive to act like this ring wouldn't make a difference, Freddie. You know it's naive.
I don't believe in naivete. I just don't do that because I know that people will say stuff, Monica, just to have clickbait and all that stuff. You can't attach that to a Chris Paul if you're not looking at his numbers, if you're not looking at his impact. 11-time All-Star, 6 times All-Defensive Team. Do you really need a championship ring to say, well, if he doesn't win a championship ring, boy, what a scrub he was all this time. All those plaudits don't mean anything. That's why I don't fall victim to that naive or naivete from people because I go by what I've seen. My eyes are pretty good at my age, and I've seen a guy that has been dominant as a point guard the minute he got out of Wake Forest when he was 20 years of age. Whether he wins a championship or not does not mean he's less of a point guard. We don't attach that to John Stockton. We don't attach that to Oscar Robertson only having one championship. So why are we doing that to Chris Paul just because he has not won a championship ring or gotten to the NBA Finals?
Freddie, you're making too much sense now. You're making sense for us basketball people who appreciate the position and appreciate the guy that sets the table just so. All I'm saying is, you know, it's a crowd out there. The rings mean the world, right? But I will say this. For Chris Paul, it was interesting to me to hear him say that he felt like he had been written off. I mean, I obviously am not necessarily in NBA circles in terms of front offices that may have written him off. But more than anything, myself and folks that I've been talking to as of late, you want to see him healthy, right? Like so often we've gotten into the playoffs and he has an untimely injury. And I'm one of the folks that still wonders what if in terms of that Houston Golden State Warriors series. And so I agree with you. For me, he is definitely a top 5 point guard. I mean, you look, he's actually 5th on all-time assist lead on the all-time assist list. And that is quintessentially, right, what we expect from our point guards to set everybody else up to run the team. And you look at what he's been able to do over the course of this series. While Devin Booker has been fantastic, while I think DeAndre Ayton has taken the next step in his ball game, and we've seen tremendous play from the supporting cast of the Phoenix Suns, Mikal Bridges, Cameron Payne, and so on and so forth. You take Chris Paul off of this squad, none of this is going like this. I mean, you could really make an argument that the Lakers are poised to make a comeback in the fourth quarter of the waning games of that particular series. And so he gives this team such a tremendous gravitas in terms of anchoring them to the moment. And I love the relationship that he and Monty Williams said. Monty said last night, you know, Chris Paul was by his side in the worst moments of his life, his personal life. We all know about the tragedy with his wife. And then, of course, in the highest moments of his career. So we agree on Front Street that Chris Paul is definitely a top 5 point guard. But I do have an ear that will entertain those who say the measuring stick is a ring. Now, cross your fingers, knock on wood, say prayers, whatever you got to do. Let Chris Paul stay healthy and get all the way to the finals.
Absolutely.
Well, here, Monica and Charlie, to your point, here's the deal. If we're going to attach rings as the ultimate legacy, then why would we talk about Robert Horry being one of the 5 greatest basketball players of all time? That conversation should never, ever come up. He was a key contributor, and people say he's a Hall of Famer. And I'm not buying the Hall of Fame thing. He was a part of 7 championship teams. But we're not having that conversation when it comes to him saying, well, 7 rings, that means he's the 2nd greatest basketball player of all time to Bill Russell. How many conversations start who's the greatest basketball player of all time? It usually starts and ends and begins with Michael Jordan. And he has 6 rings, 5 behind Bill Russell, 1 behind Robert Horry. So when people try to use that ring argument in terms of greatness and legacy with a player, at a certain point, you got to run out and run into a brick wall because there's certain guys in part of championship teams that have rings because they were satellite players, not because they were the best thing going for those basketball teams.
We need a
And
best
we're
role
seeing
player.
that more than ever right now. What's that?
We need a best role player category. Best satellite player. Robert Horry is top 5 easily.
Well, Chris Paul is already making history. Last night, he became the 3rd player in NBA history to score 35 points in a postseason game at the age of 35 or older. The other 2 players to do so, Kareem and Karl Malone.
Good company.
All right, well, we lead the team to a series victory. We're going to debate that coming. The Bucks took Game 4 versus the Nets, and we now have a tied series. Kyrie Irving left the game in the 2nd quarter with a right ankle injury, and KD was held to 9 for 25 from the field. Here's Steve Nash following the game.
Yeah, Kai, x-rays were negative, but we'll have to see how it goes tomorrow in further tests and treatment. Obviously we lost a great player during the game, which was tough. We all got to pitch in. We all got to play together. We got to move the ball. And I thought tonight we got a little single-minded, looking for Kevin every time. Puts a little bit too much pressure on him. It makes us a little more predictable, I thought, which puts a lot of burden on him.
And look who we have joining us, Razgold Onwude joining First Take. And Roz, it's really sad because there is the real possibility now that both James Harden and Kyrie Irving will be out for Game 5. So do you think, Roz, that Durant can win a game without the rest of the big 3?
Yes, I definitely think that it's possible for the Nets and Kevin Durant to win a game, win the series without Kyrie or without Harden. But, I think one is going to take KD being great, but two, this is going to be a team-wide shift that's needed. First and foremost, this team has to be able to meet the Bucks intensity, physicality, toughness. They were out-toughed by the Bucks in this game. The Bucks, starting with PJ Tucker, setting the tone, sacrificing his body, getting on the floor, getting in fights. He might have gotten away with some fouls too, but that's part of the game plan. Nobody's paying PJ Tucker to play pretty basketball. His job is literally to muck things up and hit corner threes, and he set that tone. So as a team, the Nets need to change their attitude and be tougher and more physical in the next game. And then the next thing I would say that's also important is going to be ball movement. If they're without Kyrie and Harden, they're without two top playmakers, guys that can create their own shots, create shots for others. So what's going to be key is ball movement, body movement. And all those role players, I don't want them out there just chucking up a bunch of shots in game 5 of the playoffs. I want them to work harder to create easier and better shots for each other. Movement without the ball movement, playing in pace, beating a good physical Bucks defense down the court before they get a chance to be physical and set up with you, transition and some offense over defense, ball movement, attitude shift, and toughness. I think that's how they can do it.
See, that's why I think it's a no. And Roz, I hear exactly what you're saying from that standpoint. I don't trust that they're going to be able to do that. And we're putting a lot of pressure on Kevin Durant for obvious reasons. This is what he wanted, to be a part of the Brooklyn Nets and have that kind of pressure. Think about this, ladies. This will be the most important game for Kevin Durant since Game 7 when he played for Oklahoma City against the Golden State Warriors when they had a 3-1 lead in that series. And in that game, he was terrific, but he was a playmaker but didn't have a lot of help. And the team that he had then is better than the guys he has right now without James Harden and without Kyrie Irving. That's why it's really incumbent upon Steve Nash. Kevin Durant can't just start and facilitate things. Get him to where he's going to do the most damage. Get him on the low block, get him on isolations, and when they load up on him, you have to trust that guys will be able to make shots. I trust that Kevin Durant is going to be terrific. He's going to make a lot of plays for himself and try to make plays for other people. I just don't trust those guys that they'll be able to do that, and that's why I don't believe he can win another game in this series without James Harden and Kyrie Irving, because I trust Kevin Durant enough to make plays, but enough for other guys to raise their level and do that. That's why I don't think he'll be able to do it in this series against the Milwaukee Bucks.
Freddie, you don't trust these guys to move the basketball? I mean, let's not forget that the big three actually only play, 7 games together? We've said it all year round. They've been on the floor without their star power. I think Roz laid it out perfectly. Attitude adjustment and ball movement. To me, moving the basketball is quintessentially one of the simplest things to do in the game. And if you're asking me, can they execute an offense that includes some more motion so that ultimately it still ends up in the hands of Kevin Durant? I think that they can handle that. The idea that this team cannot step up to the occasion in terms of playing tougher, to me, Freddie, that's wild, bro. They can play tougher. There's another level to go. And all of a sudden, we're acting like this Milwaukee Bucks team has been steamrolling the Brooklyn Nets this entire series. They are not that far removed from looking like the gum on the bottom of your shoe when you're walking through New York City. And I just don't buy that they are suddenly that consistent, and there's no way for this Brooklyn Nets squad to match them in terms of toughness and something as simple as ball movement. I even think that they can bring the defensive intensity to support Kevin Durant. One game, Freddie? Ross said series. I don't know if I can get with series, but one game? They can get one game.
Here's to your point about one game. After game 2, what were we saying about the Bucks? When they lost by 39. People said they had no chance of winning the series. So we're going to use the one-game theory. Then we got to apply to both of these situations here. All of a sudden, you're trying to tell me that, okay, one game later, that the Brooklyn Nets are going to find their shooting stroke, and you're thinking that Landry Shamet, Joe Harris, who's been terrific, who's not been terrific in this series, other people are going to step up. That's asking a lot of those guys, because we have to remember the genius of Kyrie Irving and James Harden. You can overcome James Harden. You still have Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant on your basketball team. But not having both of those guys and say, hey, Kevin Durant, go out there and lead the way. And we got Mike Jones, we got Blake Griffin, and all those guys.
You can
have all the ball movement you want, but if guys aren't making shots, then it doesn't matter. And then you play right in the hands of Milwaukee Bucks. This is more about the Brooklyn Nets, not the Milwaukee Bucks.
Talk to him about KD's greatness. Talk to him, Rob. Please talk to him.
Let me tag in, sis. Can I tag?
Yeah, please. You win. Go.
No, but Freddie, this is a team that has only seen KD, Kyrie, and Harden play 8 total games together this season. It's not like any of this is brain surgery or something brand new to them, suddenly having to step up and deliver. without those big three even being on the court together, they still managed to be second in the East. You know, you bring up Joe Harris, who has yet to find his stroke in this series. I think he's shooting just above 20% in this series. He's supposed to be one of the top 3-point shooters in the whole league. I think the types of shots that are being created are important, and how they're creating good and hunting for great shots is important. And I keep coming back to ball movement. Basketball is a simple team game. You look at the 2 wins that the Nets had. They were averaging like 27, 26 assists per game. And the 2 losses, they're way down around 17 assists. You know, so you're talking about a difference in play creation and also creating some offense off of defense, making the game easier for each other. And then to come back to defending Kevin Durant, when you look at the way they were running offense once Kyrie was out, Coach Nash said it himself. The team looked predictable. They were giving the rock to KD, and it kind of looked like, please make something happen, Kevin. And the problem is that the Bucks have personnel. First of all, PJ Tucker is physical on him. That's the first line of defense. The second line of defense is also big and long. Chris Middleton or Brook Lopez waiting for him. There's so much size and physicality, working hard, all focused on KD. Almost all his shots were contested, hard, fouled. He was on the floor. He's getting yelled at. You know, Connaughton's bleeding. This is a physical matchup. So it's not only creating better shots for each other, and to your point, you're like, well, let's set up KD more. As great as KD is, you still got to help make the shots more in rhythm and easier for him as well.
Roz, I hear you, but you're not playing a regular season game. This is playoff pressure in a Game 5 that's going to feel like a Game 7. So based on what you and Monica are trying to convince me, and let me give you credit, you're not convincing me at all, but it's a nice try to both of you. In this situation, I expect Kevin Durant to be great. I expect Kevin Durant to get 35 and 40. But where's the other 20? Where's the other 15? Where's the other 18 going to come from? Well, those guys that he has right now, part of this basketball team in this series with that playoff pressure going into Game 5, and I know they're playing at home, that is asking a lot of those guys. You guys are exactly right. You ladies are exactly right. Ball movement, creating better shots. But are we really trusting Blake Griffin to make those shots? Are we trusting Joe Harris?
One game, Freddie. That's the thing for me. One game.
Yeah, it's one game.
Blake Griffin hasn't made shots the whole series. So you can add that. He's made a couple of shots here and there.
You didn't say one person had the 18. You just had to have 18. You said we got to come up with it.
Monica, he had a play yesterday where he is going to the rim. He sees Lopez, and he did a 180 to throw the ball back to somebody else, threw the ball out of bounds. If he's doing that and not trusting himself, also we're going to trust Blake Griffin to do that in the Game 5, you can have that faith all you want. I'm not having that faith at all.
Blake Griffin has been full of surprises in this series. We found out he can still jump. We found out he can still defend.
This is great news.
And we found he doesn't want to dunk on tall people getting to the rim, too. We found that out, too.
Okay, well, look, the Nets, they're 9-6 when one member of the Big Three plays. That since James Harden's debut with the team. Now, that being said, last night makes the first time within this postseason, also the regular season, that the Nets neglected to score 100 points in back-to-back games. So they definitely will have their work cut out for them, especially if KD is the only one on the floor of that Big Three. All right, Roz, thank you so much.
Thanks, Ed.
Always appreciate
so good to be
back.
Bye, Roz.
Ben Simmons is the most important player tonight. He's done a terrific job of making it a little bit more challenging for Trae Young. Yes, Trae has still gotten his numbers, but Ben Simmons is right there sort of needling him and harassing him. But beyond the defensive adjustment that most of the basketball community agreed that the Philadelphia 76ers needed to make, in the last time out, Ben Simmons did a much better job of being aggressive on the offensive end and getting to the paint. We know that the Atlanta Hawks don't have an answer for Joel Embiid. He was 12 of 16 from the free throw line, plus 30 points the last time out, and has been terrific on the glass. But I also don't think that the Hawks have a consistent answer for Ben Simmons. And if any of the evidence of Joel Embiid's partially torn meniscus bears any type of fruit, then Ben Simmons has to step up and take some of the weight off of Joel Embiid. When he is aggressive, getting out in transition, attacking the paint, I know he don't love going to the free throw line. We don't love watching it either. However, you have to keep this Atlanta Hawks team honest by attacking the paint and making them defend you.
Well, one thing, you're right. With Ben Simmons, they did a great job on Friday night. They put him in the post because a good big man is better than a good little man down there any day. And he just wore their behind out in the post, had 11 points and 3 assists in that third quarter. But the guy he's guarding is the most important player. And Monica, you're right. When it comes to Trae Young, he's had the numbers, but they haven't been impactful numbers. They've been empty calorie numbers because it's one thing what we saw in the first series against the New York Knicks. It seemed that any time he did something was impacting not just the physical nature of the game, but also the mental nature. He was able to wear out the Knicks from that standpoint. Other than game 1 in the first half, he has not done this against the Philadelphia 76ers. He's gotten his 28, he's gotten his 9-10 assists, but they have not gotten the crowd excited. They have not deflated the opponent. That has happened the other way because Joel Embiid has been unbelievable in this series and what he's been able to do. But other guys have stepped up. Seth Curry, he's made impactful plays. Ben Simmons, he's made impactful plays. Thibault, he's made impactful plays. Trae Young has not been able to have somebody else make him have those impact kind of plays. John Collins can do it, but not to the level that we saw in the first round series against the Knicks. Same thing with Clint Capella, both ends of the floor. Trae Young has to be that guy that when he makes a play, that everybody in Atlanta just wants to stand up and shout. They were not able to do that in game 3 because of Philadelphia's defense. If they're going to find a way to make sure this series becomes 2-2 and not 3-1, he's got to make those kind of plays that the opponent says, oh, here he goes again, and there's nothing we can do about that. We have not seen that from Trae Young at all, and a lot of spots in the first 3 games of this series.
Freddie, I don't know if we're going to see it. I was
agree,
up close and personal with that Atlanta-New York series, and the difference to me defensively in terms of what the Knicks were able to do and what the Philadelphia Sixers are able to do is they can put pressure both on Trae as a ball handler and kind of disrupt what he's doing, but they also are fully equipped to have meetings at the rim. We've seen Joel Embiid swat down, Tobias Harris getting the mix there in terms of swatting away some of those lobs and making them more difficult of a pass. It's interesting that you said empty calories because, yeah, they weren't quite as energetic plays, but without Trae's numbers, these games aren't even as close at points in the ball game as they have been so far. So I agree with you there, but I just think Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, for what he can do on both sides of the ball, continues to be my guy to watch moving into tonight.
All right, well, the 76ers do have history on their side. They're the 5th team in history in the NBA to score at least 120 points in these 6 of their first 8 games of a postseason. 3 of the previous 4 went on to win an NBA title. So there's a little something to chew on. Okay, now let's look at the Jazz. They took a 2-1 series lead into LA, and tonight as Kawhi and the Clippers try to even the series after blowing out the Jazz in Game 3. So, Freddie, who you got in this one?
I got the Clippers winning game 4 because I thought this series would go to 6 or 7, so I'm not going to back away from that. And I thought the one thing the Clippers did was not so much playing with energy, but they played with intelligence. Because how many times, ladies, have we seen this team just going up and down the floor, just putting the ball in Kawhi Leonard's hands and hoping for the best? They were so efficient offensively, where they were able to move the ball and find the open man. They attacked the rim. They didn't care that Rudy Gobert was at the rim waiting for him. They said, okay, we're going to be there too. What are you going to do about it? They were able to reduce him just a little bit, and they were able to guard Donovan Mitchell just a little bit better. And I think this is where the absence of Mike Conley is going to be felt, because Donovan Mitchell has to do everything. He has to bring the ball up, facilitate. Joe Ingles can do it at times, but they want Donovan Mitchell to do it. When Mike Conley's in the game, then you can play Donovan Mitchell off the ball a little bit more. They can't do that until Mike Conley comes back. On the other side for the Clippers, so many other guys have been able to step up and make plays inside and outside. And when they're raining threes, then everything looks a lot better when they can get to the front of the rim. I think they're going to do that again. They slow down Donovan Mitchell, the spider enough, and they win game 4 and make this a 2-2 series.
Tall task of a formula. Now, listen, the Clippers were on fire. I think Reggie Jackson, Paul George, and Nicholas Batum combined for 15 of 21, I believe, from 3. I don't buy that they continue to shoot the ball that torrid from behind the arc. I actually think that the Jazz bounced back in this game because when I look at this unit, we've talked all year long, Freddie, about how efficient they have been on both sides of the ball in terms of that defensive efficiency, the way that they move the ball, the way that they're able to shoot the ball. When you look at it, they didn't shoot the ball. I mean, it was 43%, which is not terrible in and of itself, but they did not match the way that the Clippers were able to shoot. And so I think we see the Jazz elevate a little bit on the defensive side. We see the Jazz continue to shoot the ball well. And to me, what we're seeing throughout this playoffs is the teams that have honored the game, quite honestly, you got to be true to the game, right? With continuity, have been together the bulk of the season, didn't try to skirt, matchups or anything in the playoffs. That, to me, is coming to fruition. When you look at both the Jazz and Phoenix, what they were able to do for the bulk of the regular season has come to fruition in the playoffs. And so I actually think the Jazz bounced back in this one. I still agree with you that this is a long series, but I think the Jazz get this one in LA.
Well, if they get this one in LA, then this series is over in 5, because I don't trust that the Clippers are going to win game 5 in Utah. Not at all. I don't think they have that kind of mental makeup to overcome a 3-1 deficit. They have the mental makeup to give away 3-1 leads, but not the mental makeup to overcome 3-1 deficits. So if they lose tonight, the Clippers, they're not winning game 5. This series is going to be over. And think about this, Monica and Charlie. If the Utah Jazz don't win tonight, now it's a long series. Guess who is going to be helped by this? The Phoenix Suns. They're sitting back, hanging out with Aaron Rodgers in Hawaii. They got Mai Tais. They're playing canasta with people right now. If you're the Utah Jazz, this is really when you got to go after the Clippers, because the longer this series goes, the better it's going to be in the Western Conference Finals for the Phoenix Suns, who are already ready to get in relaxed mode, get their minds and bodies right for whoever comes out of this series.
You ain't have to.
These are facts. Suns are chilling. Now, LeBron, he's also chilling in a different way. He's on the court, but this time he's courtside supporting his son, Bronny. This is unlike any high school game you've ever seen before. Star-studded affair. LeBron brought along his friends, Drake, Jared Dudley. No big deal, okay? That's a high school game. No problem. Monica, what's one word to describe this scene?
This scene, in my vernacular, would be described as hype beastie, y'all. This is super hype beastie. Anytime Drake gets involved, and not that he's not a real fan of Toronto, but anytime Drake gets involved, the eyeballs are elevated. Like, we get it. LeBron has a son that plays basketball, blah, blah, blah. But now this just becomes, oh, you seen Drake? Like, Drake was there. This is super hype beastie for me. And, take it or leave it. What are we? It's June? It's a high school basketball game? Like, come on, man.
This is when Twitter is great, because if we had not had Twitter, we would not have seen any of this, number one. My word is usual, because this is what Drake does. Monica, to your point, I'm not going to use hype beastie. You should patent that, because that's going to make you a lot of money. But this is usual with Drake. Whenever he's around, he's going to let people know that he's around. I'm not hating on him at all. I'm not going to hate on any grown man or grown woman making their brand better and better. But was anybody really surprised that Drake showed up and was just going to sit back front row and not say anything or not do anything? Come on. I was born tonight, but not last night. We knew that was going to happen. So this is the usual when it comes to the hype beastie man known as Drake.
This is nothing like my high school experience. I will just say that much. Nothing like it. So I envy the kids in that gym. All right, guys, it's been a fun show. Thanks for hanging with us. Molly and the guys, we'll be back tomorrow. See ya.